Good morning, everybody, and welcome to Q&A with Whitey. Thanks very much for joining us from around the country. Looking forward to today's conversation and appreciate you taking time to be with us. Make sure you're now ready to go, that you've got your coffee in hand, ready to enjoy that as we go, and something to eat. Obviously, morning tea time for me today. A little bit light on, I'm on the run. Some peanuts. And important to remember, not all peanuts are the same. So if you're like me and you're a type 2 diabetic, which I am, make sure your peanuts with their total carbohydrates are not more than 10% of the total composition in the nutritional table. Very, very important. Some of you would have seen over the recent past that I've been doing a fair bit of traveling. Nothing too unusual with that. But I think last week I did 4 states in 4 days, all good fun. But getting back to the point, I let my diet go over the last few months. This year's been crazy and hectic. My blood sugar levels as a type 2 diabetic had gone through the roof and hit double figures. My wife was really pissed at me. I didn't tell my doctor because he would have cut my neck off. But within a week, I controlled it, and it's now down at 5.5. And I say this is because type 2 diabetes is a disease of your diet. Your diet will control it, and that's exactly what I've done. So for any of you who are in the same boat as me, type 2 diabetic, diet. It's 80% diet, 20% exercise. I do next to no exercise but walking around the airport. Be here. I'm rambling on. Let's get on with this morning's conversation. So I'm really looking forward. This is going to be fun. Yeah, thanks for joining us. And of course, thanks to our sponsors who support us as well from around the country. And our thanks go to AAMC, Affordable Stuff, ALI, Amfin, Heartland, Finstro, Early Pay, Credit Fix Solutions, Insurance Advising, if you want really good quality PI, Notify, On Deck, OptiPay, Travelbook, Lone Stripe, Financial Prosper, and Pepper Money. Thank you very much for your support, folks. Enables us to do so many things that we do for you free of charge. All righty. Now, let's also move on to, if I can get the girls to move to our next screen for me. Thanks to, you may be confused thinking we're about to talk about those cute cuddly pets that you put on your lap and pat. No, not at all. From the Hound Group, get it? Pets, Hound. Yeah. Okay, let's move on real quick. I'd like to welcome Peter Smyth to join us. Pete, how you doing?
I'm just unmuting and I'm starting my video, Whitey.
There you go.
You got me?
Gotcha.
Good.
Hey, I like those black shirts in the background. I'm a size large. Not that I'm suggesting anything.
I'll wait till your diet kicks in and we'll see if we can find you a small.
No, yeah, that ain't never going to happen. Let me assure you. Diet has kicked in. It's always interesting with these sorts of things because 2 years, actually now it's almost 3 years ago. It is 3 years ago. I was insulin dependent as a diabetic. And so I'm sticking a needle in my gut every night. And I hate it. It was my worst fear. And as things got worse, I fell into the hole. I looked at it too hard. But when I changed my diet 2.5 months after that in 2020, so that would have been February and 2.5 months out, been off insulin ever since. And it does impact its diet.
I think all of us have got to have a sort of a regimen that suits us and suits our environment. So I heard you saying earlier that you do 80% diet and 20% exercise.
Yep.
For me, it's about exercise. And I get into a routine where it just automatically, first thing when I get up in the morning, I pull on my walking gear and my walking shoes and I power walk around the neighborhood for about 40 minutes.
Nice.
And that does me. It's made a huge change to my health and my life actually doing that.
Yeah, it sounds like my wife. She's very similar like that. It's out there and on walk. Get out and about in the community in the local neighborhood. Excellent. So Pete, look, thank you so much for joining us today. I'm really excited about this conversation. I love looking into the future as to where things are going to go or might not go and what the challenges and impacts are. And especially, at the moment, and we're all talking about open banking and CDR, consumer data rights and all that stuff. And you sit back and go, are we waiting for Terminator 20 to happen? Well, I don't know how many Terminator movies there may be. You know what I mean? Are we staring down the future? Something could be really dark. So I want to explore that a little bit as we go forward and see where that takes us on this journey this morning. But firstly, what I'm really keen to know, tell me a little bit about you. Obviously, you're running Hound Group, and Hound is all about open banking and the future of technology. park that to 1 minute. Tell me a bit about your youth. What was your journey from sort of like coming out of school and progressing through your career to wind up where you are today?
Well, that's going back quite a way, but I'll give you the short summary version. We'll fly low and slow over the landscape, if you like. So I qualified as an actuary way back in the 70s. And as soon as I finished celebrating my qualification, difficult as it was, I decided I didn't want to do that. But I was working in the life insurance industry, and I then moved into sales and marketing in life insurance, which of course morphed into financial planning. And from there into business development and international business development. And that was when in 1996, I sought fame and fortune outside Australia, and I moved to Asia. And I spent from 96 until 2020, so 24 years I spent living and working outside Australia. And that was not all in life insurance, because the life insurance industry was changing then. And we had life insurance, pensions, asset management, investment. And of course, that also blurred into banking. And I ended up spending a large amount of my time, almost about 11 years with ING. So I'm a sort of a fully credentialized member of the Orange Army, as they call themselves, the ex-ING people. And then I worked in North America for a while, and then came back to Hong Kong and continued until I took a job in private equity about 10 years ago. And that was about, because of the history I'd had, that was about opportunities to develop businesses, invest in businesses, and so on, all across the financial spectrum. So everything from leasing businesses for motorcycles in Indonesia to banking businesses in Pakistan and India and so on. So that was my background.
Leasing motorcycles in that part of the world would have been huge. They're all riding motorbikes.
Well, exactly. And how do you actually get to a country like Indonesia with that massive population? You don't use conventional means. You have to go out to the villages. And so, the business model is to actually enlist the village headman as your sales rep, essentially. And then it was fascinating, a lot of fun.
And look, the Orange Army is all good. My wife is Dutch, so the Orange Army is a good thing.
Yeah. Well, and that was to some extent, Whitey, because I was living in Hong Kong up until 2020, but I was coming back to Australia on a fairly regular basis, and increasingly so in the latter part of the teen years because of what was happening in Hong Kong. It was time to exit Hong Kong. It was time to come back to Australia. And my network was based around ex-ING people. And so I had a network here. Someone, I forget exactly how, presented me with the idea, which has become Hound. And I then started to develop it through my informal network of predominantly Orange Army type people here. And then they said, well, that's a really good idea. And then roll the videotape forward, come early 2020, just before the borders closed for COVID.
Yep.
My wife and I came back here after being away for 24 years, took up residence here. And that was for a whole bunch of reasons. But the most important one was Hound was ready to go, and I was going to come back and work on it full time.
And sorry, you came back to Australia just before COVID?
Just before COVID.
Welcome to Australia. Stay in your house.
Yes. Well, we arrived on the morning of the 1st of March, and with way too much luggage, and eventually sort of moved back into our house and so on. But of course, everything closed down shortly after that. Didn't go anywhere. So it was lucky.
Goodness me. Interesting. It's interesting when you see the course of events with things like this. You sort of, you move from one country back to Australia, and obviously in doing that you had plans of what was next. And all of a sudden, some bastard says, "No, you can't come out of your house. You just stay." You say, "Wait a second, how am I going to deal with this now?"
Well, and that there was an added part to that too, because at the time my co-founder who was splitting his time between the UK and Australia, and he was in the process of planning to move back to Australia, and he and I together were going to then, stand the Hound business up. He got trapped in the UK with the borders being closed, and unfortunately, a very sad part of Hound's history, he caught COVID and died in the UK at the end of that year.
That's tragic.
Yeah, so the COVID story for me and for all of us associated with Hound is all very real, with original co-founder suffering that way.
Yeah, dear me. I'm going to move on from that. That's sad. But yeah, look, it's part of life, unfortunately, and we can't escape it. So my mother passed away in 2020 at late April, just after COVID hit, and she was 96. So she'd had a good innings, and God willing, I'll be so lucky. But there's many stories throughout that period. Yeah. Let's move on. Let's talk about our topics for today. And I think the first thing I want to talk about and get your views on is something that I've seen come out of in my mindset. Now, you may say, no, you're wrong, it's been around forever. It seems to have come out of nowhere and rocketed to the top of the charts sort of things. And it's quite interesting, but I don't know if it's also dangerous and whether or not it moves away from people actually having a brain. And that's this thing called Chat GPT. Yep. And I don't know what the GPT stands for. Actually, I did see it at one stage, and I can't remember what it was, but I don't know what your views on this Chat GPT, but GPT. But I've used it a couple of times, and I've actually found it quite fascinating what it does. But also what I've seen is people presenting things that's obviously come off it because it's not the way they write. Yeah. And what do you? And I sort of wonder. So we're all going to wind up brain dead because we're going to use technology to do it, and then does Terminator happen and they take over the world, sort of things. They've learned all this stuff through machine learning and blah blah blah. Maybe I just watch too much sci-fi, which is probably correct anyhow. My wife would say that, but she says, "Oh, you're watching B-grade shitty sci-fi." There's no such thing. Your thoughts, Peter?
Well, it's. You're right that it is new, and when anything like this is new, it takes a while to find its footing. So at Hound, we've used ChatGPT to write things. We compose things, and anyone who sits down and tries to write material, prepare content, it's incredibly hard. You start with a blank sheet of paper. That's the hardest part of any task. So we prepare things and then we say, well, okay, let's use ChatGPT and see what it does. And on the surface, you think, wow, that's pretty impressive. That's really well written. Yep. But you have to look through carefully because there's going to be things which are slightly off beam, slightly off tangent. Yep. So at the moment, I would say to some extent it's a novelty. It's fascinating, just a bit the way you described it. Is it mainstream? For us, no, it's not. We're sort of toying with it and looking at how it can improve some of the content we write. Mm-hmm. I think we're going to go through a phase where, unfortunately, whenever any technology comes up, the bad actors get onto it probably first. And people find ways of utilizing new technology to their own personal ends and not to the advantage or the general well-being of the whole community. And that's why you're seeing a lot of attention, not just here, but in all sorts of jurisdictions about what should we do? Should we ban it? No, shouldn't. But should we regulate or restrict? Don't know. Too early. I think we're going to have to go
watch that, please, because with politicians and regulators, if they move on legislative instruments or regulation around certain things, the thing that I've seen, not in this space, but time and time again, is the regulators come in, tighten the nut, tighten it a bit more and go, oh, shit, hang on a sec, that was a bit too far, we better back it off a bit. I always get worried that they jump in on these things and take it too far and then have to backpedal from it as well. Not always a good thing.
That may happen, and that's why I'm saying I think we're going to have to just experiment with it, and there's going to be a whole lot of good stuff, and people will find out some good things. But unfortunately, I think we've got to recognise there's going to be some bad stuff as well, because the techniques about matching speech patterns, for instance. So a good example, if you think, and you will remember this certainly, that you voice identification, would get you to speak, Pete, and we'd say, yeah, that's definitely Whitey, no doubt about it. Well, that's not the case anymore. Anyone who's got that sort of business model that is saying, oh, I can match your voice pattern, I know that's as good as a fingerprint. Well, no, because you can actually duplicate that now. So there's one example. But I think what will happen, like with any of technology, the good stuff will end up winning, and we'll end up correctly regulating and restricting the bad stuff. So it's early days.
Yeah. So for all the brokers that are listening in today from around the country, I know mortgage brokers have used this technology, Chat GPT, to actually help them write loan submissions. And it takes a couple of goes because it needs to be personalized, and it's not when it sort of happens in that framework. But then they take the essence of that, or the majority of that, and then personalize the touches that need to be done through it, and have the lenders come back and say, this is a fantastic submission. So they go, good. But it's interesting how these things evolve. Because I go back to the era in banking, and this is how things changed. The era in banking where we had what we called hand-posted ledgers. So you wrote in somebody's passbook that they deposited $10, and then you mathematically in your head added up that they had $90 beforehand plus $10. That's $100. Put your initial next to it and go stamp, and you're done. That's where my banking started, way back in the.
That's going back a while.
It is, and you were forbidden by the bank manager to use a calculator. You had to be able to do it in your head.
Yeah. Well, that's all gone though now.
Yeah, but this is that journey. That's a sort of what the hell is that sort of thing.
Yeah.
And now we're talking about technology. Not only does that stuff, but actually can write submissions, policies, I guess, for you, anything you want, so long as you then, I guess, adapt it to make sure it fit for purpose.
And of course, it can be used to sit exams, write theses. This is what the education industry is worried about. And the other thing which the proprietors, if you like, of things like ChatGPT are going to have to worry about is, as different people use it, they will gradually perfect. So, for instance, your loan submission example you just used, what's going to happen is all loan submissions are going to look exactly the same eventually, because they're all going to gravitate to the same. Now, then, of course, the lenders are going to go, wait a minute, this doesn't sound right. So there is, to every force, there's a countervailing force of some form. I think watch this space.
Yeah, interesting. So this Chat GPT, is that a part of the ecosystem of AI? I'm the dummy in this. So is this a form of AI, or is AI something different again?
Well, there's a lot of these terms thrown around. So AI is one that's probably, it's the flavor of the month at the moment, more so. But there's other terms which I would use, which also come to this territory. Like, we got algorithms. Now, at Hound, we don't talk about AI, but we talk about algorithms. We also, and even the predecessor of algorithms was fuzzy logic.
Oh, yes. I
remember that? Yeah.
It had no idea what that was meant to mean.
It's what it means essentially is that originally with technology, you had to get this equals that, and that's definite. So it was kind of binary. It was either yes, it is right, or no, it's not right. Whereas what fuzzy logic did was say, well, I'm going to take information from a whole bunch of sources, and it's 50% right, 60%, 70%, 80% right, so that you're not 100% match, but you're thinking increasingly indicatively, this is probably correct. And we actually, so we use the term fuzzy logic here at Hound quite a bit, because one of the things we do, not to go into a great long spiel about it, one of the things we do is we take data from brokers and we have to match it. And matching it with commission statements and other sources and filling the gaps in the data, and the data is incomplete or out of date, or there's gaps in it of some form. we use fuzzy logic techniques in the sort of intellectual property we've got that goes and matches all this. So we can match with reasonable certainty. So there's fuzzy logic. Now, perhaps I was thinking the other day, maybe we should stop calling it fuzzy logic. We'll call it artificial intelligence. But there's just another example of it.
Yeah. So the artificial intelligence piece, is that, so I'm just trying to get my mind around. Is that machine learning? Is that chatbots? Is it everything?
It's all that. It's all that. I mean, machines learn, and so that's like the fuzzy logic thing. When I was talking about, when the machine has done some matching and it has seen that this looks like a well-trod path, I'll make it into a sort of a rule. Now, that's essentially machine learning.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Well, that makes a lot of sense. Nice. Thank you.
Yeah.
That one's up.
But I think the point with all this stuff, Peter, is that you can only do whatever we're using, artificial intelligence or fuzzy logic or algorithms, whatever we're doing, you can only do so much depending on the data. See, you remember there's an old saying, GIGO, garbage in, garbage out.
Yeah.
Well, if you don't have decent data or you don't have complete data, then no matter what fancy stuff you do with artificial intelligence or algorithms or fuzzy logic or whatever, you're not going to get anything terribly meaningful out of it. Yeah. So it all comes, you've still got to deal with the data. These techniques don't solve the data problem.
Yeah. Oh, that's interesting. And talking about the data side of things, we now got the other term of the moment, open banking. And I know some years ago I was on a study tour in the UK and sort of just starting to roll out there. Australia was lagging behind that a bit, but I think we've gone caught up on anyone else in the world and surpassed them in a lot of cases around this. But can you, in simple terms, because I'm a very simple person, what is open banking? What is it really about?
Open banking, probably best described as a means by which a bank account holder can securely authorize somebody or some person or some institution, some entity, to see some or all of their bank account data. Now, you might then think, okay, but the important word in there is securely, because we've all, ever since, you think back to screen scraping, which first, it was the way these things started.
Yeah, I was going to say, is this the evolution of screen scraping?
Yeah, well, see, in the UK, I think I'm right in saying that they don't do screen scraping at all anymore. I think the government sort of, it's like a sunset industry, and they've closed it down. And here too, the notion of, I'll send an email with my bank account details, my login and my password. I mean, no, don't do that. So there's been a lot of emphasis on how can you do this securely, and that's what open banking, the consumer data rights, that's where that comes from. And it is a means by which you, as a bank account holder, can decide to securely share some or all of the details of specific bank accounts with a person or entity. Now, that in itself sounds relatively simple, but to do it in a way that you as the account holder do not have to share your login details or your password or anything like that, that's the key thing. So with open banking, and certainly what we do with PUP, which is our open banking application, we don't retain anyone.
Hound and PUP. Is PUP the son of Hound?
Correct. PUP is son of Hound.
Yep.
PUP is the open banking functionality is part of Hound, which is a broad proposition. And then we thought, right, immediate need, open banking attracts a lot of attention, and it's a significant pain point for brokers. So we'll just make open banking solution available. That's where it comes from. But what it does, it we never retain any details at all about a person's bank account. We don't see it. So that's why we work with what they call a CDR accredited provider, which is called Additree. And that sets up a mechanism which is completely secure. So the customer, the borrower, can feel, okay, I'm sharing information with Whitey because he's my broker. And we go through a sort of a somewhat circuitous process, but it's very quick. And then you as the broker get to see the information updated continuously every time there's a change over the next 12 months. So you don't have to go to a portal, you don't have to ring up or anything like that.
So would it then be is Additree as the authorised or the whatever it is for CDR, they must have significantly secure means of, in my mind, transporting data, moving data around. It must be like military grade stuff, yeah?
Well, it is, and for an entity like Additree to become accredited and certified and approved and a provider, a CDR provider, is a big deal. That's what they do. And so we deal with them. So it's I mean, I don't, unless you want me to explain what's involved, but essentially the idea is that a broker comes to PUP, to Hound, takes the PUP application, then you sign up for it, you become a user of PUP. And then whenever, for each of your borrowers individually, or indeed a new prospect individually, or you can do it en masse, you can go and arrange securely so that you then get their information continuously updated for the next 12 months. Now, so first of all, the broker has to become an accredited user of PUP, and then there's a mechanism by which each of his customers, his or her customers, then have to go through a process which takes about 60 seconds.
No, it's interesting because obviously Additree is a commercial business-to-business style arrangement. It's not to the broker, which is why you guys there sort of almost aggregate in front of it and get the accreditations in place. No, it's interesting because obviously over the last 12 months we've had the issues with Medibank and all these latitude where data has been pinched and so on. What protects people from that not happening in this field? Is it just a level of security encryption, whereas these other people may have just been slack on their technology securities, or is it something again? And is it something again? I don't know.
It's a combination of things. So it is, first of all, it's the whole CDR regime and all the steps in the process. Secondly, it's got to be done by somebody like Additree, which is an accredited CDR provider, and they are sort of looked over very securely. And then thirdly, I suppose in our case, so Hound's technology, what's our security? What do we do? And so that's the third aspect you have to look at. And we are all built on Salesforce. So if you like, the security of information that a broker is holding, that he has received through the open banking, is all retained under the Salesforce security network.
Okay, so riddle me this one, young Pete. Is this blockchain? The term blockchain seems to have disappeared.
Yes. I wrote down blockchain on my notes ahead of this call, and I thought, no one talks about blockchain anymore.
Sorry about that. There you go.
Look, no, it's not blockchain. And blockchain, rightly or wrongly, is more commonly associated with cryptos. And of course, because that's what's behind all the cryptocurrencies. But no, I mean,
different again. Yeah. Hey, on that point, and being a guru of the future of technology in this world of ours, is crypto dead? In your, this is just a personal viewpoint, so we're going off a little bit. It's just, you mentioned, I thought, to me, I mean, some countries have banned it, some countries play with it. to me, it needs some serious regulation around it. But I don't know. I just don't see it going anywhere.
Maybe I'm old-fashioned, but I'm kind of a little bit with Warren Buffett on this. He has decided that this is not for him, and I must admit, anything that I feel I can't reach out and touch, and I know that probably sounds silly because we don't reach out and touch the Australian dollar very often these days. I mean, who carries cash? But I feel comfortable with it. Yeah. I doubt.
Yeah. Because it's even like and I can't even remember the term for it, but where people were like trying to trade pieces of art digitally.
Yes.
They call it, and that seems to have died as well. So because you can never touch it. It's just like I could draw a stick figure on a piece of paper and say, here's a value to it, and I'm going to trade it. Yeah, very, very simple terms. Yeah.
Look, particularly if you spend time at any of these new venture type conferences, there are all sorts of amazing ideas. Some of them get traction. Some of them are just wild and they disappear. I mean, I always, at various stages in the development of Hound, I've been along to these sort of, forums, seminars, events, conferences. And I always think to myself, gee, Hound, with what it's doing with the mortgage broking industry, sounds remarkably sort of, almost old world compared to all these wild technology things and people with big hair and flashing lights around you. I'm thinking, oh, here we are talking about mortgage broking. I'm feeling a little out of place here by comparison with the sort of people that go there. So, but a lot of those ideas die, Peter.
Yeah. Somebody's just put in the chat room, yes, NFTs is what I was trying to...
Yeah, non-fungible tokens. That's right.
There you go. Yeah, maybe that's in its name tells you a lot anyhow.
No.
Yeah, but it's interesting because I mean, generally what I was talking about now is all about the wheres and wherefores and foundations as to where and why we are today. Because if we understand that framing, it gives you, in my mind, an insight to what that future and what the journey could look like or will look like, depending on. And that's what I'd like to explore with you now. Is so we're at this point today, and we will come back. So I do want to talk a little bit more about Hound and Pup, but where does this go? To me, and I've said publicly at seminars, conferences, or in media that technology to me is the driver for broker market penetration to reach 80%. It'll do the grunt work, if I can put it in that terminology. I don't believe we're at the point in our evolution of being on this planet where technology will take jobs away from brokers. That human interface piece, even if it's through screen like now, but that human interface piece is still going to continue for quite some time. But technology needs to continue to evolve and develop to actually truly take over that behind the scenes work, which is that manual paper stuff, the grunt work, as I call it. And broker market share will drive to 80%. It'll keep going as long as those things happen. It may go beyond that in future times outside 10 plus years. But it's important that this piece is right. And it's important, and as we've been talking about, the security of that data transfer has to be right. Otherwise, the thing will almost self-implode. Because one of my issues has been, because of those breaches of recent that have been very public, is the consumer concerned or hesitant to start and use this sort of data transfer capabilities through likes of yourselves? Are they going to use it, or are they scared that my data is going to get thieved again, has been hacked into before in the past? And that's why that security piece I'm interested in, as to what that encryption capabilities or that protection piece looks like. And obviously from your position, there's probably multiple levels of that. There's the auditory level, there's your level, and then the banking system has its level. There's all these sort of pieces that frame around it that hopefully keeps things very secure. But if we are where we are today, and based on what is a very short period of time, I think the development of these things, the phone, I can remember when I had a brick, right?
Yeah.
The bricks used to have a battery pack that you used to carry on a shoulder strap. Or you couldn't, before that, you couldn't even get it out of your car. It was locked into your car, and yeah, you're not meant to talk on the phone. You know what I mean? You used to pick it up and you're Maxwell Smart or something. Yeah, the evolution of the mobile phone is amazing in a very short period of time. And here we are talking about these styles of technologies that in some respects are in those periods of time where the phone was a brick sort of thing. Where does it go to? Because the evolution of mobile phones is just off the dial compared to its computing capability and its storage capability from 20, 30 years ago, 20 years ago, whenever it's been. Where do we go to from here? What's the journey going to look like, do you think?
Well, I think the first thing is that the technology is not so much going to lead the industry. The industry is going to lead the development of technology, because if the technology is not relevant to people in the industry, then it's not going to get traction. Item one. So therefore, we say, well, what is it? And your point about technology needs to play a role in how brokers take their share of new loans settled from 70 up to 80%. Yeah, absolutely. But I think it's more than likely that it will happen. So we then have to think, and let me just take a little side journey on that point, because I said earlier, I started off working in the life insurance industry. And in Australia, back in those early days when I first qualified as an actuary, there were over 40 different life insurance companies. And they used brokers, and they had their own captive sales teams, and they had enormous, overseas conventions and what have you. It was a massive, great machine. And all of these companies were profitable. Now, why were they profitable? Well, they were profitable because the customer down the end, the life insurance customer, didn't get a very good deal, because the life insurance customer was paying for the cost of all that superstructure.
And now, they were paying big comms in those days.
Yeah, they were. They were paying huge comms. And the way the industry... well, the way the industry used to work, Pete, was that it was all about making new sales. It was all so it was a hunting environment. Yeah. Now, what's happened over the course of the time, over those 40 years or something, how many life insurance companies are there in Australia now? Much less. They really don't have their own captive sales teams anymore. The business is being done by independent brokers, financial planners. Now, I don't want to go into how the regulations have happened there. We want to make certain those the regulatory reforms that have happened there don't happen here, and that's another subject.
No faith coming down this stream.
No, but the point is, what has happened is that there's been a gradual transference of, if you like, strength in the relationship to the end consumer and the person who acts as their trusted advisor. Right. Now, that is what's going to have to happen, and what will happen, I think, in the mortgage broking business. So the customer will end up getting a better deal, and the customer will work with someone who plays a sort of a trusted advisor role to help that person ensure that they've always got the right mortgage and the right deal. But to do that, you've got to have technology and you've got to have data. So that's a sort of a long-winded answer to how I think technology and data is going to evolve in the industry.
Yeah, and it's interesting because it does all seem to come back to that, doesn't it? It's all about the data.
Yes.
And I can remember for decades being constantly drummed ahead, data is king.
Data is everything. Without data, you got nothing. You run all these fancy programs on rubbish data, you get rubbish results. Yeah. So that's why, one of the things which was a driver for us in establishing Hound is that essentially the mortgage broking industry has got a data problem. And it's the data is sort of incomplete, out of date, it's not updated. All the emphasis is on settling new loans, and you sort of go through and maintain information up until that point. But once that happens, it doesn't get maintained anymore. Yeah. So the information about a particular person and their loan is all fragmented and all over the place. Now, that's the challenge that you've got to solve. And that's the thing that that's the big nettle that we grasp. And that's what we're working on solving. And that's what Hound does.
Yeah, yeah. So I've got a question coming about the banking environment, but I do want to ask something just in front of that. the banks always bitch about their legacy systems, all right? How much does that impact this capability of driving into the future and what we're talking through open banking and or are they actually going to spend some of their billions of dollars and update their technology at last?
They're not going to do so willingly and with great enthusiasm. They are going to have to be dragged kicking and screaming to the party, I think.
Yeah.
There's a wonderful saying that I learned during my many years in Asia, and that is that sometimes you have to kill a few chickens to get the attention of the monkeys. And that is, I think, what is going to happen here with the big lenders. And look, the other thing, Pete, is I remember having worked in large institutions, every year people would say, yeah, look, we need to make a business case to upgrade our core operating system because it's out of date and it's cumbersome. But it always never made the final cut. It was always the can was kicked down the road. And now people see why being stuck with a legacy system is a huge pain. You can't be nimble and agile in a world which is demanding nimbleness and agility.
Yes, it's a quandary.
Yeah.
Well, spend some of those billions of dollars of profits you make, Mr. and Mrs. Banks, and maybe we'll see you progress somewhere further. Hey, look, the questions come through, and I'm going to put out there, I don't quite understand some of the terminology here, so hopefully you do, Pete. If not, whoever sent the question through, maybe they can clarify, but let's see how we go. The question is, what is the future of banking in Australia if CBDCs are introduced? And I don't know what that acronym is.
CBDCs. I'm not certain either, because there's a lot of acronyms and I'm not certain the context of the question. So pass, or can I phone a friend? I'm
regularly.
No, I don't understand. But look, I think what is going to happen, if I can just comment a little bit about how banks.
Here we go. It's central bank digital currency.
Well, so this goes back a little bit to our currency, our sort of currency and technology. And I don't think so. My answer to that would be, I don't think any one thing is going to determine one way or the other what the future of banking in Australia is. Yep. What I think is going to happen, though, and it will be a long, slow process, but at the moment, everybody, I'm sure, on this webinar knows that banks in Australia, particularly the big banks and all their satellites, they make most of their money from lending money on mortgages. So my dear deceased partner that I spoke about earlier used to refer to the big banks in Australia as building societies on steroids. And
a lot of people listening might not even know what a building society is, but we'll move on from that. But
yes, correct. Again, I'm dating myself. But as you know, the competitive environment and the transparency, which is brought about by access to data and the ability to act on it, and an informed, trusted advisor who can help people, the margins that big banks can make out of lending money on home mortgages are going to be under pressure, and there's going to be more of an opportunity for other lenders to perform, et cetera, et cetera. So there will be a change to banking in Australia, and it will be less dominated by lending on home mortgages.
Yeah. Interesting future, one of those journeys. I won't get too sidetracked on currencies because it's not quite where we're at in the general, but a shout out and thank you to Barry for posing the question. It's an interesting conversation that is probably a session in its own somewhere. So it'll be interesting to see where technology does take us. And although I won't be here, but it'd be interesting to see 30 years from now as to where that journey has actually landed. We've gotten through that early development phase. It's had a period of bedding in, which has probably got that legislative framework that starts to grasp around it. And then it sort of gets a life of its own after that. And I think it's interesting times ahead for young brokers, that's for sure. Who'll see all that.
I think if you're a young broker coming into the business today, you've got a very different sort of perspective than someone who came into the industry 40 years ago, because it was then, and the keys to success were relationships, and you knew people.
Yes.
Today, you need to know people, but you need to have that augmented by technology. And if the industry is going to transition to being sort of a more data-based and technology-enabled industry, then you're going to have to be a people person as well as a technology type person. And that doesn't mean replacing what you do, because the personality stuff is still important. But this is how you get cost effective and efficient, by using technology and data.
Yeah, I agree. And that efficiency piece, I think, is very important, and especially from a broker environment consideration. We got human intervention at stages when people are trying to discharge a loan, and the banks are trying to take it off the refinance piece at the last minute. That garbage has got to stop. One way is a legislative movement to put some sort of mechanism in place. Like the insurance sector, from memory, basically has a provision where you get the opportunity, if somebody's going to move their policy elsewhere, you get one chance to say, this is my best deal, but you don't get a second bite at it. It either is or it isn't. And it can move on. And that's probably something I think our treasurer and our regulators need to look at and say, well, we've got to have the same. But the greater resolve is technology. Take the people out of it, let technology drive it through the system, and it's done. Yeah.
Well, and a good example of this technology, and the other word I would use is standardization, because as I'm sure everyone on this call knows, that if you want to do a discharge with a bank, they're all different.
Yes.
Why are they all different? Well, there's a great word called obfuscation. This is basically sort of creating barriers where no barriers need to exist. Now,
I call that lawyers trying to justify their job.
Well, it's also a consequence of what you said earlier about being stuck with legacy systems, because if they're going to change the format, then they've got to change the system. And it's all because you're stuck in the past, if you like, with these legacy systems. And that, I also have a lot of sympathy for the big lending institutions, because it's hard, extremely hard to make these changes.
Well, at least they've got one advocate. I'm not sorry for him at all.
Well, but if the power, as I said, if the power is going to transition toward customers, and customers will get a better deal, borrowers will get a better deal on their home loans, and brokers will be able to do a better job about assisting them throughout the process, through transitioning from one lender to another at different stages of their life, right through until, if you want to think about it, right through till we get into reverse mortgages and people start sort of drawing that money down. I mean, that's all part of it. Yeah. If we're going to do that, then we definitely need more technology, and we need better data.
Yeah, embrace the future and get rid of the garbage out of the data.
Well, that's what we do.
Yeah, excellent. Oh, hey, let's I just noticed that time is ticking away on me. Goodness me, too quick. Talk to me about Hound and Pup, the son of Hound. So where do we start? Which one's first? Hound?
Hound. I'll start with Hound.
Give me a good understanding what is Hound about?
Hound is all about a system for brokers to manage their back book.
Right.
If I put it very simply, it's a back book management system. Why is this important? It's because the typical modus operandi for brokers, for a whole variety of reasons, is that they focus most of their attention on trying to source new loans, settling them, and then going and looking for more. They don't have enough time to devote to retaining their existing customers. So what's happening while they're working hard to try and get people in the front door, they're leaking out the back door.
Yeah.
So, and this becomes important. It's not important if you're a brand new broker starting out, because you haven't got anyone to leak out the back door. But what is happening is, as people build up their businesses and as people buy portfolios to grow that way, then this becomes a bigger and bigger issue. So our job is to, and that's why I was talking about data at the first place. What we do is, first of all, assemble for the broker all the data on their existing borrower customers in one place and keep it up to date. So it's correct, complete, and up to date. Now, to do that, one of the things we go out to all sorts of places and get information so that we're constantly updating the data. One of the things we do is open banking, right? Because that's one of the sources of information. It's obviously not the only one. There's a lot of others, but that's the way we keep the data up to date. And so in the process of developing Hound to do this whole job, we realized there's an incredible standalone opportunity if we just carve out the open banking component and make it available, hence PUP.
Okay, because this whole piece around the back book to me is quite important and fascinating, because I've been taking slaps in the media about banks and also cash rates, all that sort of stuff. Sunrise has termed me as their financial CR. So I don't know if that's a smart terminology or not, but anyway. But yeah, exactly. Maybe they've got nobody else, so there is only one. But we'll park that one. But the whole business about back book, I mean, on average at the moment, the back book is around 41 basis points higher than the new offering to new borrowers. And it fluctuates between that 40 to 50 sort of basis points over time. And, you know, when we're looking at things with customers, we need to be conscious of the new borrowers they come in, that we're not putting them into someone who has an average backbook pricing that's 55 basis points higher, for example. I don't know if anybody is, I'm just using that as an example. So there's a consciousness that even with the customer coming in, you need to understand what's happening in that existing lender's backbook, because you may give somebody a really great deal tomorrow and they're going to hate it today and they're going to hate you tomorrow. Their rate jumps up above cash rates and other movements. And then the piece you're talking about right now is, of course, is maintaining that existing customer base, the back book on the lender's portfolios, to ensure that you're across, I guess, the interest rate impacts and movements that are happening there. Anything else that may be influential in as far as accessing data, to turn around and say, well, you know, they've been sitting there quietly for 12 months. Maybe I should have a chat to them, make sure they're not about to do something I'm not aware of. It'd be proactive about that management.
Yeah. Well, again, this comes back to data. So if you as a broker don't know what's going on with your customers, you can be blindsided, because that someone approaches that customer of yours before you know they're out of there. So this is one of the things we do. Having established the data, we then have artificial intelligence, algorithms, fuzzy logic, that trawls through and finds those people in your customer base who appear to have an unmet servicing need or appear to be at risk at the moment. And it pops them up and says, talk to these people about this, that, or the other thing. That way,
to proactively manage your clients.
Correct. And of course, so therefore you find out stuff. And, you know, with some of the trials we've been running in beta launch with Hound, one of the triggers is on the market. So we can find out if the security property has gone onto the market. And that means that they're planning on making a move or selling or something. So we've been able to identify those and send them to the broker, and the brokers have latched onto this. The borrower's amazed. How did you know? Bingo. So that's just one small example. So
that's a good example, though, because, you know, that's things that I think that we would generally miss because we don't necessarily see it.
No.
It's not that visible. You can look at realestate.com.au, but you may not even see it depending on what your search functions are. And it just goes completely unnoticed.
Right.
All of a sudden they sell the property, your trail stops, you go, crap, what happened there? This way you can be proactively in front of it.
Yeah, well, and you say, oh, that person, if you've even got time to look through your commission statement, that person seems to have disappeared from my commission statement. Maybe they're arrears. Well, but it's a bit late. Maybe they've gone, you know. So,
exactly.
So part of what we do is all about then having established and maintaining the database, then interrogating it and finding out these, if you like, at-risk customers with right message, right customer, right time.
Yeah.
That therefore puts you on the front foot with them. You know, it picks up things like, you know, if someone makes a big repayment in their mortgage, so all of a sudden the balance outstanding goes down, so the LVR is down. So, okay, what's happened there, etc. So
it could be a positive thing. So, well, you've gone and do that. You want to buy an investment property and cross-collateralize the property without having to put your hand in your pocket for cash.
correct. So
Wow.
yeah, that's what we do the annual reviews or periodic reviews, so that because they never get done, because it's always the sort of thing that gets pushed to the back of the queue.
Yeah.
But if you do that, and what the system does is actually prepare a sort of an annual review or periodic review report.
Yeah.
So it makes it easy. So it's all about sort of making it a bit easier to do these things, which are going to mean that you can get on the front foot with the right people and retain them, because this is, otherwise you can't build an asset up to sell it when you want to exit the industry.
Yeah. And it's what I was saying earlier on. It's getting technology to do the grunt work. It's doing employee behind the scenes, and that's what Hound's doing there to help you manage your back book. And PUP is the piece that helps to access the open banking to populate that data. Is that correct?
Yes, that's right. So we're making PUP available on a standalone basis. So have a look at this and say, okay, that's the open banking functionality. If you go to Hound, well, you get all the rest of it as well. But this way, you just get the intro to Hound, if you like.
Okay. I've got a question just come through, but we'll probably have to make this the last question because our hour is gone, my friend. God knows where, but anyhow, we're done. The questions come through is, how do I get my current data into the system?
Yeah, well, we do that for you.
Yeah.
Your current data, the person who's asked the question, maybe all with one aggregator, but look, a lot of brokers that we talk to have changed aggregators over time, and so they have a bit of their back book with one aggregator and a bit with another, so that the problem is split. All of that, what we can do, and this is part of the sort of if you like, proprietary intellectual property we developed, which is to take data from an aggregator CRM and from the commission statements and from whatever else the broker has got, and mush it all together, and using some of that fuzzy logic stuff that I talked about before, we can then populate for you, for the broker, a customer database. And we can say, these ones, high degree of confidence, 75%, 80% good. These ones questionable, these ones missing data, and we flag what's missing and suggest what you do to go and find out and fill it in.
Peter, thank you so much for spending some time with us. Peter Smyth, the father of Hound, that makes you grandfather of PUP, just saying. Mate, thank you so much for spending time. I love this conversation, and look forward to having you back again as we progress forward with what's happening in the marketplace. I very much appreciate your time, and thank you for joining us today on Q&A with Whitey.
Thank you for having me, Whitey. I really enjoyed it, and it's been fun. And like you, the hour has gone very quickly.
It has. All right. Thanks very much. All the best.
Bye.
All righty. Thanks, everyone, for joining us today. Again, thanks to our sponsors who have supported us. And of course, as we finish today, there's a CPDs that come up for you. That will come out to you by email. Our next Q&A is the 13th of July. So get ready and mark that in your diary, and we look forward to having you as a part of our conversation then. All the best. Thanks once again, and we'll see you soon. Bye for now.